はいはい。これ会場マイク。いい ?OK、いっちゃんね。はい。
英語、英語、通訳英語、英語、英語、英語。 Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing for English channel. Testing, testing for English channel. Testing, 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 testing for English channel. Can you hear us? Testing, testing. Testing, 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 testing. Okay, okay, good. Thank you. Speak slowly, please.
それでは時間でございます。
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to start this briefing. We are really grateful for the large attendance. I am the Director General of KEK. My name is Yamauchi, acting as the facilitator for the briefing. This doesn't need any introduction. In 2012, to the Japanese government, we appealed to have the ICFA in Japan. And today, the international community got together to have the meeting, and also the representative of the Japanese government came in and gave us the government's perspective. And also after that, we did discussion. Therefore, we like to give you some briefing. We have two speakers. Well, we have ICFA, International Future Linear Collider, and Professor Jeffrey Taylor is with us. And below ICFA, ILC-related Experts Committee, LCB, Linear Collider Board, and we have the chair of Linear Collider Board, Professor Tatsuya Nakada, and those two speakers will talk on the briefing. Dr. Nakada, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the kind introduction. I just want to give you only our gratitude of Linear Collider Board toward the Japanese community, scientific community, also the legislative body, executive bodies, and also the industry, all the other people who made lots of effort to realize the linear collider, international linear collider in Japan. And in particular, we were very grateful to the ministry, MEXT, who sent the delegation to us today to explain the position of the Japanese government concerning on the ILC. And this was really the first time where we could hear directly from the ministry on the position of Japanese government. And we are very grateful to this. We made a very intensive discussion and deliberations. And I think it's more appropriate for Jeff to summarize what we summarized and ask so the endorsement to the ICFA.
Thank you very much, and thank you to our Japanese hosts for having this meeting here in Tokyo. I'm astounded by the interest from the media. It's clear that in Japan, the whole of high energy physics, and in particular the International Linear Collider, is a very important project. Over 40 senior physicists from a dozen nations met here today to discuss many aspects of international future experiments, future accelerators. ICFA is the body which oversees and encourages and tries to promote particle physics at large accelerators. So of course, we have been very encouraged by members of the Diet, who, in particular, the Honourable Takeo Kawamura and the MEX Director General, Keisuke Izugai. The story starts back in 2012 when the particle physics community in the world announced the discovery of the Higgs boson, a very important and unusual particle which has a major impact on our understanding of how the universe has evolved. The discovery of that particle at CERN was a major milestone, and since that time, the idea has been very forcefully pushed by not only the people in ICFA, but also right across our fraternity, right across the world. The idea of having a Higgs factory is the number one idea in particle physics right now, and to do that we need an intense and rather specific beam, which the ILC is going to provide. However, it's a very expensive machine, and it's a very complicated machine, and it will require international cooperation. The scientific significance of this endeavour has been made very clear. The ILC has the capacity to provide very high precision measurements of the Higgs boson, and we also note that MEX has referred to the advanced technology and other positive impacts that the ILC, the International Linear Collider, will have on the local community. We have been encouraged by the fact that we have the Diet members talking to us, as well as MEX at a senior level talking to us, which really shows us the political and executive environment in Japan is evolving quite rapidly towards an ILC. We're also encouraged that there has been communication about the ILC across many ministries in Japan. This is also a very important milestone and shows some significance in this project and the support that it is finding at all levels of government. The important step that we await is for the Japanese government to commit and to declare its interest in becoming the host of the ILC, and the commitments around that have been well established. That both the Diet members and MEX understand the implications of Japan becoming the host nation for the ILC. The most important thing for us in the future, in the near future, which has been encouraged by MEX, is to talk with our partner institutions and nations and governments around the world to start to develop models for how the sharing of the costs of this facility will be made to allow for the project to become realized. So the work done in broadening the benefits of ILC has been extensive to date, but we need to do more work to make sure our colleagues in other areas of science in Japan will also embrace the benefits of the ILC. The one thing which we would like to have as an indication as soon as we can is the statement from the government of Japan that it does wish to make a host and to host the ILC, and that is the next step which we await. The world of particle physics is very much a collaborative world of institutions right across the world working on facilities in a collaborative way. These facilities are large and they are shared, and so the particle physics community works together to define and to develop the next generation of machines. And the ILC has been in that role, that we will be trying to develop the ILC. It's had the premier role in that in terms of the next machine for some years now, and we are now really waiting for a stronger indication of that Japan will host the machine. We should say that there are other machines now which will also be competitive in the coming years, so we would like very much for the ILC to be approved and to keep the momentum so that Japan can lead the way in this area of particle physics for the coming decades. Thank you.
はい、それではご質問を受けしたいと思います。手を挙げていただければ。
Now we like to receive questions. Yes, please. The person in the front row. To address to anyone, or can I ask the name? Either speakers. Oh, I have a question to two speakers. Today, as the next bureau director made a statement, and what was most impressive, and what is your impression about the comment made by the Bureau Director General?
Thank you for that question. I think the most important, there were several points which were important. One is that, first of all, it was the Director General of Promotions, so it's a very high level of MEX coming to address ICFA. In the statement, there the encouragement we have is that MEX is asking KEK, the major laboratory in Japan, to talk to other governments and other funding agencies to look towards a sharing of this facility.
よろしいですか。他にいかがでしょうか。はい、じゃあどうぞ。
Please. Hokushinpo, Katayama. With regard to the next statement, expression of interest which was requested by NCB, do you believe that the statement made by the next was positive in tone, similar to the statement of intention? But the Japanese government, that the SCJ concluded that it is not ready to accept it at the moment. That is untrue, that SCJ failed to express its intention to host it, but when it comes to ILC, it showed interest and different kinds of benefits that it may bring with. They also showed interest in different kinds of benefits. Therefore, the SCJ has not expressed a clear intention to host it, but looking at the overall situation, the next itself has continued to show a lot of interest in hosting it. But going forward, but there should be some other processes that we have to go through, or the government has to go through, and to come to the conclusion of hosting it. Anything else? Any other questions?
Yes, please. Takeoka from Kyodo Press. Well, I have a question to two speakers, Jeffrey and Nakata-san. Maybe this is a repeated question, but basically today's statement by MEX does not state to host ILC. So basically, it's the so difficult statement. How did you receive that comment? And also, is there any idea that you may rethink the candidate location of ILC with today's statement?
Question. The statement is that from MEX was that they are not ready yet to commit to being host of the ILC. There are still processes that they must go through. However, the statement did not say that they will not host, that they will not go through this process. So we will need to go through processes that are laid down for MEX, and we're hoping that that will give the possibility of MEX being able to submit the idea that Japan should be ready to host. In terms of other facilities or other sites, there was, you may recall that over the past decade or two, there have been other sites talked about. Germany and the United States early on were considering the ILC. Things have moved on since then, but we also have other proposals around the world. There are 3 proposals, quite significant proposals, for machines that could be Higgs factories. So this is an important development over the recent years. ILC is still the candidate which is most developed and would be able to be approved and operated on in a relatively short time, given the Japanese decision to host.
私の方からは、2つの点がある。
I think I would like to mention 2 points. From the viewpoint of the MEXT, the MEXT will continue to exchange information with the counterpart government agencies. This is clearly mentioned and stated by the representative of the MEXT, and KEK is going to play a role in coordinating the discussion in the international arena. This request was also made by the MEXT. In fact, these are the 2 requests, and the statements were clearly mentioned today, and that is really a progress. One more thing. It requires a lot of budget. Therefore, going forward, I think the project may face a lot of difficulty for realization. But now that Japan is being requested to host this facility or Higgs factory, and this kind of a request, how long does it take and continue? And I would like to ask this question of the 2 gentlemen. How long does this request continue? You mean the international academic community or science community? I just would like you to clarify your question. Looking back at the past developments, even if you're going to continue the request to the Japanese government, unless the things change, there will be no change in the attitude of the Japanese government. And so from the viewpoint of ICFA, well, that you were requesting the Japanese government to make the statement clear by March 7th. But what would be the next deadline? Are you going to continue lobbying or making requests to the Japanese government until the Japanese government accepts the hosting? Well, we do not have any clear deadline. That said, as Jeff explained, this large-scale accelerator project, I think looking around the world situation, that this project has to be materialized in consultation with the other countries. So the European strategy was considered and to be formulated in that regard. But this is a European strategy that stays within the framework of Europe. But within the committee to talk about the European strategy, there are non-European scientists involved. Therefore, what would be the condition and what would be the situation around the world? That information needs to be considered or taken into account in the overall discussion of the European strategy. Therefore, IONC, if Japan is ready to host it, then on the European side, they have to take that into consideration. But instead, if Japan is reluctant to host it, then another alternative measure should be taken by the European side. So whether Japan is ready to accept it or host it will also mean determining an important factor for other countries and to decide on the future of the science strategy future. So looking at the overall situation, whether Japan is going to find a value in hosting it, and looking at the development of elementary physics, I think IONC should be defined within that overall scientific endeavor, instead of just letting others do it. But we hope that Japan is going to make a contribution in this area, along with the other countries' contribution. And so other countries and they will going to consider what would be their role to be played.
Yes, please. Kodama of Nippon Keizai Shimbun. I have a question to Professor Nakada and Professor Taylor. So far, up to today, one of the reasons why you wanted the commitment from Japanese government is in order to have the long-term European strategy, the clear statement is needed, or you cannot secure the budget. But now it is postponed. So what will be the impact on the European plan? And would you believe that the European budget can be secured, even if the Japanese government didn't commit?
I should say that the strategy discussion in Europe is based on physics. It doesn't work directly on the budgets. So it's physics priorities that are set. And for the same reason that we want a Higgs factory built, it's the physics, it's the scientists who are defining what we need and what the next project should be. Of course, we can't build a project without the funding for such a thing, but what is defining the next step is what is required for the science. The strategy update, which will occur at CERN in Europe over the coming this year, will be looking purely at what the next most important steps are seen by physicists. Of course, then that will then be fed into funding priorities for funding various aspects of the machines that might result from that. The hope that we had to have an indication of whether Japan would commit to hosting the ILC in time for the European strategy discussion to take it into account. We were hoping for that now, so that the strategy discussions could know where we stand in terms of the ILC. However, these projects are very long. They don't turn on a decision of being made 1 week or the next. We will work towards the facility that's required for us to study the Higgs boson in detail. We think that the ILC is a very good project for doing that. Japan has moved a long way towards realizing this project. If it finally turns out that Japan does not host the ILC, we can be sure that there will be somewhere else around the world where the project will be taken up. We hope it will be here because the project is already advanced in Japan, and we've been working towards this endeavour for many years here.
よろしいですか。他にどうでしょうか。ご質問があれば手を挙げて、どうぞ。
Anything else? And please raise your hand. Furuichi of NHK, just confirmation, clarification. So ICFA continues to support the hosting of Japan's hosting, and then are you going to? Are the Europeans are going to give support within discussion of a European strategy for particle physics as well?
The important thing for the European strategy to know is, first of all, the project itself, technically, the status of the ILC and the experiments to go with it. That's an important ingredient. We were hoping that for this strategy discussion that we would know whether Japan was going to be hosting it or not. So support is still there right across the international particle physics community. But there are other proposals for a Higgs factory like this with a capability that we're hoping that the ILC will carry out. So so physicists will be wanting to be driving this goal, whichever way it comes about. And if the ILC is hosted in Japan, as we hope, there will be support from the Europeans and from the Americans and from other Asian regions as well.
Does it answer a question? Then the person in the back. I'm from Iwate Broadcasting Station. Well, Kitagami Mountains is the world's only one candidate location. Am I correct in my understanding or not?
Were sites which have the right geography and geology were studied by our Japanese colleagues some years ago. There were two sites, one in Kyushu and one in the north, and both of which were capable of, from the geology. Kitagami was chosen for a range of reasons of the two, but they were both capable of hosting the ILC. Both sites were capable. Other machines of different varieties around the world will also find sites that can where the machine can be placed. But right now, the choice that our Japanese colleagues have come to is in Kitagami.
Okay. So this person, Sanke, my name is Ito. I have a question for Mr. Taylor, Professor Taylor. Professor Taylor, you talked about the statement, and you expressed that the government's willingness was accepted. And with regard to the European strategy for particle physics, I think ILC needs to be incorporated into this European strategy, and for that to be achieved, that Japan's willingness should be stated. I think it was how it was described. But with regard to the most recent Japanese government statement, do you think that that's kind of a statement that will lead into the idea that ILC initiative is going to be incorporated or embraced by the European strategy by particle physics?
The Europeans know very well that the ILC is well advanced. In fact, at the last update of the European strategy in 2013, there was the ILC was seen as an important new development in the field. We were hoping that there would be a definite statement from the Japanese government to host the machine so that this current round of strategy talks in Europe could incorporate that. We don't have a positive statement like that. However, it is the process is known by the Europeans that it will proceed at a slower rate than we had hoped. This doesn't change things too much. It makes the discussion of how this fits into the program in Europe a little more difficult, because other machines are being proposed, and it's not clear yet if the ILC will be built here or not. That would have been a very nice situation to have known it already, but as I said before, these projects of this scale take a long time to be brought to fruition. It requires multiple governments getting together. It's never going to be fast. We did hope that, as I said, that there would be a strong positive statement to host the machine. That's the fact that it's not going to be made in time for this current discussion at Europe is not the end of the story.
Does
it answer your question? Yes. The person there, please. Hatsuda of NHK Morioka. The construction cost is one of the challenges, and this time, next, I mentioned that they would like to have the discussion amongst the scientists. And to this statement, do you have any comment?
The cost of these machines is very large. There's no doubt about that. But they are shared by many thousands of people. Many thousands of physicists work on the Large Hadron Collider, for example, at CERN in Geneva. The scientists, we physicists and engineers, are very good at reducing the cost of these machines below what initial estimates might make. Scientists are still working right now. There is a program between the US and Japan, cost reduction process, which has been very successful. The machine, remember, is going to operate for decades. It's going to take 7 years of construction. That construction will lead to work in Japan during the process of construction, and then the machine will be operating for decades afterwards. We foresee such a facility having an upgrade path in the years to come. This is not something which we spend rapidly and don't get much out of. This is an investment over many decades of very important science. So the cost should not be considered by itself as just by the number. It should be considered about against how long the facility will be returning good science and technology.
Additional comment in this regard. So what the cost sharing is going to be, but this kind of discussion is not going to be imposed. But when it comes to the rule of principles, we can make a decision, and then this kind of idea and approach can be explained to other countries. I think this kind of approach is being accepted by the international community. Do you have any specific idea when this kind of approach is going to start? We would like and to establish this kind of a framework as soon as possible. Any other questions? On this side. Kahoku Shimpo. Within today's meeting, from participants, what kind of response to the Mexican statement? Any the critical comments, for example, criticizing non-clear declaration of hosting it? March 7th, which was set as a deadline in my understanding, that is because of the European strategy in order to incorporate the ILC, which was supposed to be incorporated into European strategy. Any critical comment made on the next statement?
I would say that we were hoping for this statement. In fact, we were hoping for the statement in December. The ICFA meeting today was scheduled, and the delay, we hope to get a positive decision today. We are not in control of statements coming from MEXT or the Japanese government, and so there was the hope that there was going to be a positive statement to host the ILC today. We were a little disappointed that wasn't coming. However, there were many positive aspects to the MEXT and also to our discussion with Diet members last night. We see that things are moving and that processes are unfolding, and we are still very hopeful that given some not too long a time, but months or so, that we will end up with a solution that with a positive response to hosting the ILC.
Let me add a comment. Of course, this is the huge challenge and huge costs involved, so it is not really the easy solution. So first, maybe we start with the wording that they are interested in. And of course, the positive statement to host ILC was best, but what they said is that they are interested in that, but there are challenges, and challenges have to be resolved. That is the show of interest that Japanese government gave. So that is a positive statement. So at least we know challenges, and against those challenges, the solutions or ideas are needed. That was mentioned. Therefore, with that, we'll be able to make a plan more specific. Thank you very much. The person in the front row, Shudo of Mainichi newspapers. Today's next statement included that the future direction should need the process via SCJ. Actually, SCJ said that they cannot support to host ILC. So even if there might be further discussion at SCJ, it is rather difficult to expect that they would agree to host the ILC. So what is the process that you consider? Let me answer. Yes. SCJ, inclusive of the findings, they say that they cannot support ILC. But those findings or the inquiries are those that should be resolved. So with those solutions, we might come up with a positive statement. Therefore, we would like to answer to those inquiries to come up with a master plan. Actually, that master plan in October this year will be decided, but the time is very short. Then how can you convince SCJs? There are some inquiries. There are some technical challenges. And for these technical challenges, we already have solutions. So those solutions will be shown to SCJ. That's one thing we will do. And also there is another thing that we're going to initiate. That is to make the framework for the international cost sharing. And so we would express, we would tell them this is a framework that we're going to make. Those are the solutions. The person in yellow shirt.
Iwate Nippo. My name is Kumagai. At the CERN, in replace of LHC, there is a new initiative and to construct a new one. Professor Nakada, you talked about that impossibility of setting a clear deadline, but at the same time, Professor Taylor was expressed that he was expecting to get a response from the Japanese government in a month and time, whether a new collider in replace of LHC or ION-C. Now you have to make a decision at some point in the future. What do you think is going to be the deadline for that purpose? You mentioned that you would expect a positive response from the Japanese government in 1 month time. Did you make that kind of wish clear to the representative of the MEXT?
I think it needs a bit of clarification. The Large Hadron Collider is a completely different machine from the International Linear Collider, and the international community of particle physics wants both machines to be operating. The Large Hadron Collider already has an approved upgrade plan. The upgrade will take place through the middle of the next decade and will be operational until well into the 2030s. So that's going to be happening in parallel to what we hope will be the ILC as well. So there's not a choice to be made between the two.
Not LHC. Next accelerator project. So in the initial studies, electron will be used in the idea. So if ILC is not possible, then isn't that another machine is that particular machine?
There is a proposal for a future development at CERN to have a large ring with electrons and positrons inside that ring. This is a proposal which has been developed over the last 4 or 5 years. It will also require a process of funding approval and so forth. That the ILC is a different way of getting to that capability, and as I said, we will need both kinds of machines, the LHC type machine, which is protons, and an ILC, which is colliding electrons with positrons. Both of these machines are required, and the proposal that you're talking about is a large 100-kilometer tunnel facility. And as I said before, there are proposals competing with ILC now that are becoming closer to reality. That's a reality, but we at this stage we want the ILC to be approved soon, and that would then, of course, that would make a decision for what to do at CERN a little easier, because there are other choices at CERN as well. This is not the only choice that you're talking about at CERN. There are other developments which are being considered, and as we all know, this is an international field. We want to make sure that the facilities are shared across the globe, and that the resources for these facilities are also obtained from across the globe. So the idea that you're talking about is definitely a competitor, and will be a competitor in the future, depending on exactly what happens to the ILC proposal in the coming year or so.
Okay. Any other questions on this side? My name is Sue. Now, again, coming back to the issue of deadline, the Minister for the Education emphasized the importance of the process. I think it was related to the master plan of SCJ. So as for the next master plan, the decision is going to be made in 2020. So the master plan is adopted in that year. And then from that master plan, that the roadmap is going to be formulated at the level of the ministry. So that means, as far as the formal decision is going to be made by the Japanese government, it is going to be in 2020 or beyond. Do you believe the international research community is ready to wait until then?
The international research community would love to have a decision before then. However, we don't control these decisions. We put up the proposals for the science that we have to do, and of course we are always wishing the timelines, the schedules for these facilities to be as we would like. That's very rarely the case, and it is true what I said before, and we repeated that there are competitive proposals which are not as advanced yet as the ILC proposal, and so the advantage that the ILC has in terms of being highly developed and ready to start negotiations, that competitive advantage will get less the longer it takes for Japan to decide to host it or not.
ちょっと私からコメントしていいですか。期限がいつかという。
May I comment? You asked about the due date, but it is not there's no expiry date, and yet longer we have to wait for. The participation of the international community will become less. Suppose MEXT said today that we definitely commit to do that, therefore let's work together, then of course all over the world would get an agreement, but it was not the case. Therefore, longer we have to do, we have to wait, then the less the opportunities would be. Well, of course, researchers would like to have the early decision as possible, but there are various areas of the researchers who would like to do various large scientific projects. Still, ILC would like to be prioritized. And do you have any logical reason that would make ILC the highest priority project, but in the other SEJ's hearing, you couldn't show the good rationale? Do you have any comment?
We believe that there is a very strong reason for the ILC. So convincing people of that is our job. It's part of what we have to do as scientists, requiring big facilities. We have to justify our position. I think even with a very high cost, the return on the investment is very large. So I do think we can justify this cost. We have in the past, and I think we'll be able to continue to do so. The benefit of having ILC here in Japan, even if these other facilities that we've been talking about, if they get pursued, it's still going to take a very long time to get them approved and to get them built. So by having the Higgs factory, the ILC built here in Japan, it allows the discussion of other machines to come in as a coherent mix with ILC and LHC. It makes that easier for the discussions in the future. We need a Higgs factory, and if we can build that here in Japan, then there are other options for facilities, for example, in Europe. This is an important consideration. We don't want everything to be in one place. We would like to see the Japanese government see the benefit of the ILC here in Japan, because there are great benefits generally.
Okay, so the gentleman here. Komiyama of Asahi Shimbun. I would like to ask a question of Mr. Yamauchi. The KEK is going to be the entity that will make a proposal to SCJ? Yes, that is it. And having listened to your presentations, When it comes to deadline, there is no clear one. But that said, in reality, I think you're running out of time. The clock is ticking. Is my impression correct? Well, the earlier the better, that is true. But there are competitive projects around the world, so I think the decision is going to be made in relation to them. So if you're going to wait more, then the value may be lost. So it depends on how other projects are making progress. Well, it is difficult for us to say that our project is going to remain for another 1 year or 2 years. Now, compared to the competitive projects, what is the advantage and the competitive advantage of ILC project? This is a question for Professor Taylor.
The ILC uses a new style of colliding beam. It is a linear colliding beam. And the major benefit of such a facility is that it's extendable in energy. So the first phase of such a machine, and what we see as the most important role to start with, is to produce Higgs bosons. But the key benefit of a linear machine is the capacity to increase the energy at a later stage. And there are many scientific reasons that eventually you would want to do that. And that's why I say that this investment now is an investment for decades of science, not just the first discoveries.
Well, physically speaking, I do understand there is advantage from the scientific point of view, but with regard to the feasibility of the project to be achieved compared to other projects, how about that? Is there any advantage in that area?
The project technically is rather advanced already. So it is new technology in many ways. Some of the other competitive machines that are being talked about, at least one of them does use also rather new technology. The circular machines, the technology is not much more than we have right now, but you have to build a 100-kilometer tunnel. So it's a different trade-off of costs. So the technology developments, which is always an advantage if you're hosting and building a new machine, technology is very important for local industry. The ILC has already pushed technology rather well, even in the R&D, the research and development phase. And during construction and in the upgrades to the machine in future, which would be expected, the benefits of that are quite large.
Well, let me supplement. In case of ILC, well, how long R&D was done? Actually, the longest R&D was already done for ILC. So in terms of the technology and also the design, I believe right at the moment it is most advanced, particularly for accelerator machine. The superconducting accelerator is designed, the similar structure, and also the energy is 1/10. Using that, a synchronization or the radiation type of the accelerator is operated. Therefore, in terms of the development phase and also the industrialization, right at the moment, ILC is most advanced. In that perspective, if we're going to construct a linear collider, in some sense or another, it is most advanced in terms of the design, and also various experiments was done with ILC. Of course, if we wait, then situation will change, but right at the moment, it is most advanced for sure.
Okay, any other questions in the front? Iwate Nippo, my name is Sato. I think there was no answer to the previous question. I just would like to clarify this. What kind of observations and comments were made by the participants following the presentation given by Mr. Isugai? Would you please elaborate on some of those comments?
I should be quite open. There was disappointment. People were hoping that there would be a statement already that Japan was willing to host the ILC. The Japanese government is not ready to do that yet, and so yes, physicists waiting for the next step in their understanding of the nature of particles has been delayed. So there was disappointment, but there were signs throughout the next presentation, and in particular from the Diet members last night. There were many positive signs, many positive words. And I think we don't see it as a dead end. We don't see this as a roadblock. We see it as a delay over what we had hoped for. But we were never in a position to be able to tell the Japanese government that they must give us a decision by a certain deadline. That's not our business. We were hoping, and we had to deal with that.
よろしいですか。他にいかがでしょうか。
Another question? Yes, please. You take the floor. Yuri from Yomiuri newspapers. I have a question about cost sharing. So in the community, you would place the fora to talk about the cost sharing. LHC upgrade will continue to 2030s, and also U.S. has the other proposal. Of course, it is the governments who would decide the cost sharing, but how do you see the other governments cost sharing? Well, actually, 800 billion yen budget can be shared by those countries. What is your comment?
Try to answer that. The cost-sharing models, the negotiations with other countries have not started seriously yet. There have been many informal discussions with some key governments, but it is only now that there is the official request to talk to potential partners. It's not even at the negotiation phase yet. It's at a phase where discussion of how this sharing might occur is beginning will begin officially. There have been unofficial discussions for quite some time. There is a readiness to discuss, but of course there is a big difference between discussing and actually paying for a contribution. But as has been mentioned right throughout this briefing, particle physics is a very international field. Cost sharing at all sorts of layers is a standard in particle physics at the level of the experiments, at the level of the machines. Cost sharing is something which we've been doing for many years. This is a big project and requires very significant discussions, but we know that has to happen, and we don't see that it's not an impasse. It is part of the process.
I think we are approaching the end of this the conference, and so we are going to entertain 2 more questions.
もうよろしいですか。
All the questions are done.
はい、じゃあこちらの方。
About the site, Jeffrey-san was talking about Kitakami Sanchi was not the only choice or a candidate. I think that's what you explained. But as far as the Japanese press is concerned, Kitakami Sanchi was the only candidate site, and that was determined. That's what we have heard of. But I just would like you to make it clear. Is this the only site or one of the sites? Let me respond. No, the Japanese government has not yet made a decision yet, and no decision made at the government with regard to Kitakami. So the researchers found this candidate site, and the only site available that was found was Kitakami, because I thought that the researchers checked this potential candidate sites, and there were 2 that were found, and either would do. But from the view, the Japanese government has not yet made a decision yet, but from the viewpoint of the researchers, Kitakami is considered as the sole the candidate. I thought that Professor the Taylor did not clearly say that, so I just wanted to clarify that.
That aspect of the development was an internal Japanese process. I was referring to 2 sites that I knew about in the past, which had been looked at, but the Kitakami site had been, they'd both been evaluated, and I believe that is the, right now, that is the choice amongst the scientists. In terms of the final decision by government, that's not in my hands as well. But there were 2 sites being discussed, and you heard about the fact that that's still amongst the scientists, not at government level, which I wasn't aware of.
よろしいですか。それではあと1つにしたいと思いますが、いかがでしょうか。
So the last question.
Then, can we conclude the briefing? Well, then this concludes today's briefing. Thank you very much for your attendance.